you had a bunch of cities, Los Angeles being one of them, that decided to defund the police. They actually took a hashtag policy and implemented it. And so you saw a rise in crime, a lower quality of living. And in Newport Beach, we said, oh, the heck with that. We're going to do the exact opposite. And so we doubled down on our police department because we said, what is the point of a local government? One of them is public safety.
Recently elected chairman of the Orange County Republican Party and former mayor of Newport Beach.
Will O'Neill.
Will O'Neill, welcome to State of Gold.
Yeah, thank you.
Great to have you. Thanks for spending time with us.
I've actually listened to every single one of these podcasts.
Every single one?
Every single one.
Wow.
So when I was asked, I jumped at the chance. So thank you for having me on.
I'm really flattered. Let's talk about your time as mayor of Newport Beach and your time in the city council, because you stood for and acted on a couple issues that are so important for California writ large. Pension liabilities, right? Starting, unfortunately, with Ronnie Reagan and then doubling down with Mayor Brown. We went from peace officers having the right to collectively bargain under Reagan. He did it for his own reasons. And then Jerry Brown expanded that to state employees. And now we have these massive unfunded pension liabilities that most citizens don't understand and we're all paying for. You stood against this in Newport Beach. You tried to restructure them. What did you do? What did you learn? And how do we apply it broadly?
Well, when you're at the city level, you've got a whole lot of state laws that are going to constrain you. So, for example, most people in the private sector, when they're talking about their own pensions, we talk about two different kinds. One is a defined benefit and one is a defined contribution. So the defined contribution says my employer is going to put a certain amount of money into a retirement account for me. And at the end of the day, that's mine. I get to invest it how I want to invest it. But for the employer, that actually has a set amount. They know exactly how much they're going to owe each year, and there's not going to be a tail end on the back end. A defined benefit plan says, we promise you, no matter how the economy does or how the investments do, we promise you that you're going to have a certain amount year over year into retirement. And in fact, that keeps getting more and more generous the more the legislature meets and continues to give this out. We weren't even allowed to negotiate a defined contribution plan. It was always going to be a defined benefit plan. So for us, the question was going to be each time we went to the bargaining table, and we had about a dozen different groups in Newport Beach, just the city, we had about a dozen. Each time we went to the bargaining table with them, the question of what is this going to cost us now and into the future was always on top of mind, because, not to get too deep on this, although I know you have in past podcasts, because the CalPERS, which is the largest pension system in the world, I believe, and the one that Newport Beach is a part of, they're the ones that control the investments. And they have a certain percentage rate of return that they peg year over year. And if they get it, great. But if they don't, well, guess who pays for that unfunded pension liability? It's the cities. Yes. And so what we did was we took our unfunded pension liability from when I was there, and we increased the funded status. So the amount, the difference between the amount that we owed going forward versus the amount we actually had in reserves was pretty bad when I first came in on city council. And so we implemented a program that actually set aside $50 million a year to pay down our unfunded pension program. Because, and I'll just finish with this, when you're trying to balance a budget, you need to look at it not just as a revenue and expenditure issue, but a now versus future issue. And I tried really hard to make sure decisions I was making while I was on council didn't force bad decisions for future councils. And I figured at best I could do somewhere between 5 to 8 years. And so we were able to increase our funded status quite significantly. And we actually went from a negative reserve on our overall budget. We went from a negative, no, I shouldn't use the term reserve. We went from a negative to a positive in terms of our overall value as a city in my 8 years on council because of that.
That's great work. And of course, Newport Beach has an amazing tax base and built-in revenue stream. There aren't many municipalities across California with similar population that can say the same.
So that's true. But I will also just say real quickly, because I get that from time to time, oh, you've got a rich community. Of course you're doing all right. Look at all the rich communities that are doing really poorly. If you look at Santa Monica right now, their budget's a mess. If you look at a lot of the LA cities, it's a mess.
But wouldn't you say for different reasons?
Yes, and that's the point though, because what we've seen is actually a pretty significant increase in our property tax value. Why? Because people want to move to Newport.
Right.
I've seen 2 spikes in my time in Newport Beach in terms of the amount of value of the property. So when I first came on in 2016, the average home was around $1.7 million in Newport, which is a lot. I grew up in Fresno. 1.7 is a lot. When I left, it was around 3.2. And one of the big reasons for that was because we implemented policies that actually attracted people to move there. And so like 2020, when you had LA just lock down and go crazy, Orange County stayed fairly open because we wanted to empower people with information. So we partnered up with our local hospital, Hope. And then also that same year, we had all of the riots that also turned in, we had protests, we had riots, and all focused around law enforcement. And so you had a bunch of cities, Los Angeles being one of them, that decided to defund the police. They actually took a hashtag policy and implemented it. And so you saw a rise in crime, a lower quality of living. And in Newport Beach, we said, oh, the heck with that. We're going to do the exact opposite. And so we doubled down on our police department because we said, what is the point of a local government? One of them is public safety. It's a huge one.
Right.
And so we actually started recruiting police officers from other agencies that were leaving because they didn't feel like they were being appreciated at all by their local city council or even their residents. And so Newport was safe, it was open, it empowered people to make the decisions for themselves, and it's pro-business. We have seen a lot of people move. And the second spike, by the way, Palisades fire.
Yeah, sadly enough.
Yeah.
Well, good job on that. I mean, I think standing for those things when it was hard says a lot.
Yeah.
Standing for them now in hindsight doesn't say as much. So good work on that. You also have been very involved in toll roads in Orange County. And, when I'm driving through Orange County these days, infrastructure seems to work. The roads are paved. The basics are happening.
Right.
When I drive in other parts of California, including my own hometown, it's variable. Our infrastructure is in some places crumbling, in some places barely acceptable. What did you learn about operating toll roads in OC, and how could we apply that more broadly in California?
Yeah, you need to make sure that you actually have responsible people at the helm, because toll roads in large part in Orange County, when you pay your toll, almost all of it is going toward debt reduction. So the purpose of toll roads in Orange County is because the state of California back in the 80s made the decision they really weren't going to spend a lot more money on basic infrastructure like freeways, highways, et cetera. But Orange County was growing significantly at that time, and we knew that we needed more infrastructure. And so they actually created a joint powers authority. The original one was the Transportation Corridor Agency, and the 73 is governed by one body, which is the San Joaquin Hills. And then we got the 133 and 241, and I believe the 91 also is part of its separate toll road agency. And so those two combined essentially are the toll road agencies in Orange County. So they floated debt, which were essentially junk bonds because no one had really done this in California. And so the rates were pretty bad. And it took until right around early 2000s to stabilize. When I became chairman of the San Joaquin Hills Board and then also the chairman of the finance committee for both agencies, we went on an aggressive pay down of debt approach because people had been promised that as soon as the debt's paid off, the tolls go away.
Yep.
And I wanted to make sure that we were actually working towards something where we could actually get rid of a government agency. And that's what we were trying to do with the toll road agency. So the first thing we did, and it was a brainchild of a very, very smart CFO, but it required the political will to actually go about doing that. First thing we did was we made sure we were stockpiling cash so that we could actually buy back our bonds when the rates went down and pay down our debt when the rates were going up, were high. And so we did both of those. And actually, because of that, we will now, as long as people already, we paid down over $1 billion in debt over a 4-year period, which was huge. And then if they continue to implement it, we'll pay it down by another $1 billion or so within about 5 years. And so the toll road agency, made up of a bunch of elected officials from around the area, have the opportunity to do something pretty special, which is pay down the debt, get rid of the tolls, and then actually open it up to people. But the real reason those exist when you pay your toll is to pay down the debt,
right?
Because the state of California wasn't investing in infrastructure properly.
Yeah. Do you think that the amount of blood, sweat, and tears to actually stand up these agencies and go private on the roads through debt, would you advise that statewide in other places? Or
absolutely.
So net is a positive.
Yeah, it was absolutely net positive. We wouldn't have a lot of the vibrancy of Orange County without the arterials. But and see, look, this is what people expect their state government to do, or even their county government to do, but that's not what our state is doing. They're trying to build a $100 billion railroad that's not going anywhere. And so instead of putting money there, why don't we actually put money into arterials, into infrastructure? And look, all of the unions, private unions that I've talked to, want exactly that. They don't want to see these boondoggle projects that aren't actually building anything. They actually want to build something. And so it's interesting because you're seeing actually a lot of the private union support that you've seen going to the Democrats forever and ever and ever, actually starting to swing back to the Republicans, because the Republicans are actually the ones that are saying, you know what, we'll actually build, let's go. And now I will say, I'm not going to be ever signing on to a PLA, project labor agreement, and they know that. But when I talk to folks, they're at the point now where they're looking at the Democratic Party, which is controlled in large part by unions, but as much so by folks on the environmental left that say don't build anything anywhere. And so they say, look, just give us the opportunity to bid for the project. We'll go figure out how to win it.
I mean, listen, it's such a win-win
Yes.
between labor and business and the Republican Party. We want to build, we want to grow, we want to create the most vibrant state in the nation. We have to actually build housing and do infrastructure, and it's a win-win. I mean, it's so simple on one level, but it's been so hard for California to do. All right, Will, let's do some rapid fire. You're king for a day.
Yeah.
The single biggest thing you do to fix California.
Single biggest. I've heard some great ones in past, so I'm just going to give you one that no one has said, which is I would kill gut and amend. So the gut and amend process is where they take this bill that has nothing to do with what they actually want to do at the very end of session, or in this case for Prop 50, they take something that actually would have been pretty decent government, and then gut that, and then amend it to be something totally different. And then they avoid the 30-day requirement in the California Constitution for transparency purposes. Right. We have one of the least transparent state governments in the history of our state right now, with some of the biggest sunshine laws, and no one's being held accountable. So if I could do something, I would kill the gut and amend process, so people actually have to debate something for 30 days like we expected.
That's really smart. I like that one. What gives you hope about the future of California?
Talking to people. I mean, my kids are 13 and 11. Every time I get out to one of their plays or an AYSO soccer game, or even just like a local high school football game, and talk to parents, people really do love their communities. They love their neighbors. They love their neighborhoods, and they expect and want better from their local governments, and they expect and want better from their state governments.
Yeah.
And so to the extent that you're having those conversations and can just say, hey, it's supposed to be better. Like all those things you'd think are not going right, they're not going right. It's one of those things where you realize. And the other one is, at the same time, when you talk to people, most people, especially conservatives, their first reaction to a problem is not running to government and figuring out how to solve it. They're usually saying, my neighbor's in distress, I think I can go help with that. That gives me hope every time I go talk to someone who has that mentality, because it reminds me, as much fighting as we're doing, and as much as I think the state government is not helping us, local communities are taking care of each other in really, really amazing ways.
That's so well said. Self-reliance. A California leader, past or present, you admire, and why?
Oh man, there's so many people. I'll give you one that's actually way off the radar, and that's a guy named Chuck Puchigian. So Chuck Puchigian is just recently retired as a California appellate court justice, but he is, and he's from the Central Valley, so he's a family friend. I've known him a long time, and I think it's hard for him actually now to see me in my role as chairman of the Republican Party and not picture me at 5 years old. But he was Governor Duke Majan's appointment secretary. He was in the state legislature at a time when it was really consequential. He has been a phenomenal judge. I mean, his wife was actually also a public servant. I think most recently she was in the Fresno County Board of Supervisors. There are these people out there that a lot of people know just because they ran for office and whatnot, but you don't think of all the time. Mm-hmm. Chuck Puchigian is that guy. And the best part about him is that when you're not thinking about him, he's still thinking about you. And he's trying to figure out how to make your life better. I love the Chuck Puchigians of this world.
I appreciate that. Unsung heroes. Let's finish with this. California is, fill in the blank.
Promising. I mean, California really has that golden promise. We really are that we can be that shining city on a hill. We just need to step up and actually take it back.
Yeah. That's a great note to end on. Thank you so much, Will.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Your insight.
Thanks.